Hello, I'm Marcia Ribot.
I am Patricia Rodriguez.
And together, we are
Little Soldier Productions.
We are foreign artists
based in the UK.
and over the last 10 years, we have made and toured work all over the world.
We love it, but it's not always been easy.
So we have invited our friends and collaborators who share the same passion.
And we have asked them what it's like for them and how they make it happen.
We want to know what gets lost in translation
What can't they travel without?
and their best border control stories.
Welcome to They Make It Happen.
A series of online conversations about the ins and outs of making and touring work internationally. Today, we'll be talking to Guillaume Pigé. He's an actor, director, mime and a magician. Originally from France, he has been living in the UK for the past 14 years. He established Theatre Rare in 2011 and has directed each of the company's productions to date.
He's trained with theatre makers and directors such as Andrew Visnevski, Stephen Wasson, Corinne Soum, Daniel Stein and Thomas Leabhart. Rooted in Etienne, Decroux, Corporeal mime, his practice takes inspiration from science, philosophy, psychology and public health to address global human challenges through moving and visually striking poetic theatre.
His work was performed in more than 15 countries, notably at Cervantino Festival in Mexico, Hong Kong Arts Festival, China, New Victory Theatre, USA, National Taichung Theatre, Taiwan, and London International Mime Festival, UK.
He is an associate artist at The Point in Islay and an associate teacher at RADA. He's regularly invited to give workshops throughout the UK and internationally.
Hello, Guillaume.
Hello.
Am I saying it right? Because I'm Spanish and, terrible at pronouncing any other language, obviously.
I think you're doing really well.
Guillaume.
Yeah, that's it.
It's French, so
Petit peu. Mon français terrible.
No, it's great. It's great. It's probably much better than my Spanish, I guess.
so welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
First of all, how was so we know you've been super busy, so thank you for meeting us after the whole opening of your new show. How was it? Tell us.
Well, it was we survived, I guess. I mean, opening a show. First of all, making a show. We've made it. We started at the end of 19, and then we made it throughout the pandemic. So, and you've been working on a show as well during the pandemic. So I think you know what I'm talking about. It's just so fragile. Everything can just collapse, and it doesn't take very much for things to not work out. So to first of all make it, develop it, and also I have to say that it's a big show. Like, it's our biggest show to date. It's big, and so just the fact that we've just been able to open is just pretty amazing. And then the show is really complicated. So just the fact that we've been able to finish the show is already even more amazing. And then, the responses have been very positive.
It looks awesome. I've seen the trailer with all those ropes and it looks very, it looks beautiful, very beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very proud of it. I'm very, very proud of it. I mean, obviously, now that we've opened, we need to now enter, a new phase of the development of the piece, which is, it needs to be seen. We need to do it over and over again, and then we can fine tune it. We can discover new things. We can keep it alive. So I'm looking forward to that next phase. Now
the never-ending process of
opening a show. Is there any dates that you can tell us for this show?
So at the moment, so obviously we've invited a lot of people to come and see it at the Mime Festival, and then we have follow-up dates in in Salford at the Larry for 2 nights, and then let's see what happens, because this is sort of the opening, and then we're hoping to sort of then convince people to take it, and then
definitely.
And then organize a larger tour beyond that. So fingers crossed.
Am I right in saying that you're still as well touring Birth? Is that still touring?
So the Nature and Forgetting and Birth are definitely still touring. But I mean, all our dates, all our international dates, we've been able to tour Birth in the UK, in England. So all our England dates have been able to go ahead last autumn. So that's good.
Yeah.
But there's still many conversations that we were having, that we're hoping, that they will transform into an actual tour. So let's see. But at the moment, now we have 3 shows out and about. Now it's just about seeing what works. So fingers crossed again. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, well, we are doing these online conversations focused on the topic of international theatre making, international artists that make, we call it international. We will go into that detail later. But in all these conversations, we are asking our guests to tell us their story. Like they have heard a little bit at the beginning of this talk about your career, but if you can tell us like what has brought you to us today, like the first impulses to do in theater when you were little. I don't know, that is story told from you. We would like to hear.
So I think I don't really know how things started. And it's not the first time I'm being asked a question, and I still haven't come up with a really great answer. So I'm still working on it. But I think I've always been good at, or at least people were telling me that I was good. But now thinking back, I think I was pretty awful at reciting poetry. When you're a kid, you learn sort of poems by heart, and then you need to recite the poem. And the teacher thought I was good. So obviously it made my ego feel very good. So I've always been, sort of interested in sort of reciting poetry and the idea of performing and being an actor, as is always been in my head. And then I started doing magic.
Mm-hmm.
There was a friend of my brother who is a magician, and I've never met him, but my brother would then come back home and would tell me about what his friend was doing. And obviously he was pretty much distorting the story or distorting the trick. But I remember, sort of my brother telling me those stories of what his friend was able to achieve. And I was blown away. He was telling me about this red scarf. He had it in his hand and then it was disappearing. And I just thought, that's not possible. That's just not possible. How? So I became a magician. So I really worked hard on it. At the beginning, everyone was making fun of me, but that's fine because I was like 11. So. And also, I'm from the countryside, so there's just nothing to do where I'm from. So magic was great because you spend a lot of time in your room just practicing. And then I also joined very early on, around when I was 14 or 15. I decided I somehow wanted to start theatre classes, but there was nothing. So my mother actually, looked for something, and she found this theatre classes in Lyon, which is the sort of near city where I'm from in France, and sort of south, middle west east of the country, near the Alps. And I adored it, and I stayed there for 6 years, and I did every single classes they could possibly offer, and that's how I started to become interested in becoming an actor, and yeah, that's how I sort of.
That's brilliant.
started.
Very good. I loved hearing about your magician beginnings. Very good. Very lovely.
And how does that little kid magician ends up in London making a theatre company? What is that kind of transition into kind of going then to study mime and then going abroad and then?
Yeah. So I met a man called Daniel Stein. Daniel Stein was a former student from Etienne Decroux, and I was absolutely blown away by this man. And I was really taken aback by everything he was saying, everything he had to offer as a theatre maker. And obviously, he wasn't teaching mime when I trained with him. It was more the principles of corporal mime applied to the making of theatre. So broadly, as we would call it, devising. But it was so new to me, and so inspiring. It was very inspiring because I think deep down I had always been looking for a craft. I was not very good at things. So when things were simple, and when you could train at them, then I was really on board, because obviously I never really bought the idea of talent or the idea of sort of inner skills that some people have and then some others don't. So the idea that actually you could just train and you could just, learn something, and if you work hard, then you'll get it, was really appealing. And so that's definitely the world of corporal mime, the idea of hard work. And also the idea that the actor within the world of corporal mime, and I know that it's not just within corporal mime, I know that it's much broader than that, but the idea that the actor wasn't just the interpreter of someone else's words, but was also, a poet. The origin of the creation process, of the making process of theatre itself, in a way, was just incredibly appealing. The fact that you didn't have to serve someone else's ideas, but you could just serve your own, really attracted me. So there was the idea of the craft and the idea of the of just being able to just do it. I thought was great. So that's how I really got hooked by mime. And then from that moment on, I just started to look for all the former assistants and former students from Etienne Decroux with whom I could train. And the knowledge is not in France, wasn't in France at the time, because obviously Decroux was teaching a lot of international students. Decroux is not very well known in France. It's fair to say, compared to someone like Jacques Lecoq, for instance, who's a lot more famous. So the students were not French. Most of the assistants were actually Americans, Swedes. So then you had to travel. If you wanted to train, you had to travel. And so I went to the US, I went to Canada, and I ended up in London because that's where the last assistants of Etienne Decroux were teaching at the time. Stephen Wasson and Corinne Soum at the International School of Corporal Mime in North London. So that's how I ended up in London in the first place.
And do you identify yourself with the label of international artists? Like how we were just mentioning earlier, that how, for me, it was a realization that came possibly very late to myself. Like I was conscious of being an international artist just because I'm a foreigner. I was based in London. I was, I was asked to do work in Germany, or, and then I realized, oh, actually, I kind of fit this. Did it happen to you, or like in the same way, or how do you see yourself in that respect?
I don't know. I don't really tend to think about it in those terms. I mean, now that you're saying it, it makes me think. I think I see myself more as a theatre maker, and obviously I do tend to go and give workshops in different places, and obviously we tour shows. I don't see myself as a British artist. I don't see myself as a French artist, but more as someone who's going to bring some kind of knowledge, some kind of expertise, and then from that starting point, we can then share ideas. So I think for me, it's not linked to any notion of nationalities or internationalities in the question. It's more linked to the idea of craft. So let's say I'm a mime actor, and I'm going to engage with a musician, with designers, with architects. So I think I'm looking at it more in terms of the crafts that are being brought around the table. I think that's how I tend to think about it. But in your question, there's also something that I think is really important, is the idea of, I think it's not so much the idea of where you're from that I think is really exciting, it's where you live. So actually I lied. I do think myself as a British theatre maker because I live in England. Even though I'm French, the work is being made in the UK.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm a British theatre maker. I think that locality is important, actually. And also because obviously the company is very international. We've got people from Brazil, from Iceland, from the US, from Italy, from Germany, from Switzerland, from everywhere. But we all live in England. And that's what brings us together.
Yeah.
So I think where you're based is where you live, is that locality, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and I think we can relate to that. Well, for many years, we both lived in London, creating work in London and London based. But one of the things that you just touched on, it was about how international your company is in itself and in your collaborators. And even though you all live in the UK, I wonder how, what is the impact that do you think it has any impact in the work that you make, that energy from, you know, like what you bring culturally? Because in the room as in a creative process, but also as a company, as the way you kind of, your values and the way you operate as a company.
Oh, I think absolutely. And especially for the kind of work we make, you know, of course, people are going to have to bring themselves into the room. So I tend to not work with actors or interpreters, or I work with collaborators. When I invite people to come and join a process, I really invite them as collaborators. So it becomes their project as well. So it's not just, you know, about welcoming a musician in the room. It's about welcoming, you know, a well-rounded artist who's going to collaborate. You know, obviously they come with a certain expertise that obviously is what we really need, but they're also going to be welcome to sort of comment and feedback and be instrumental in every other aspect of the production. So who they are and all their history, their background and their experience comes into place. It comes into the game. You know, I think it's really important. You know, especially when we share personal stories, we tend to share a lot of personal stories in the room. You know, especially in the first few stages of an R&D. So, you know, from songs from Iceland or stories from Brazil, or, you know, or from Italy, or, you know, that it's gonna the process is always gonna have an impact on the end product. So yes, of course, the diversity of nationalities in the room is definitely having an impact on the work, on the process, on the atmosphere in the room. Yeah, I think so.
In terms of the atmosphere, how? I'm kind of very interested. What do you think is that atmosphere of those
combination?
Yeah. What is the kind of atmosphere? Because we can't. Yeah, I think we can relate, but I think it's quite different when you're in a room with people mainly from one place, and then when you're in a room with people from everywhere in the world. And you know, we feel that also teaching when we taught like really international students, and then or just students from Spain or just students from the UK. What is that atmosphere? That can you put it into words? Like, do you think you can put it into words?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to put it into words because it's the only thing I've ever done. I think it's what I'm also realizing is that I've never been in someone else's process. It's always been my process. So, I mean, you know, and with everyone else involved as well. But so it's difficult to describe it because for me it's the norm. But it's not far from, you know, a year abroad on an Erasmus program, I guess, to a certain extent.
Yeah, very long.
But I guess if that should come down to one word, I guess it would be openness. The fact that you, openness and availability to respond, and, you know, not take things for granted, not being able to take certain shortcuts in lots of ways, because obviously we very often, obviously we share some things, but there's things that we don't share. And so some things needs to be unpacked, some things needs to be explained. And it's quite great because otherwise sometimes I imagine, because it's not the case in our, but sometimes there could be elephants in the rooms and we never talk about it. But here, because, you know, we don't have the same sort of starting point, then I think it helps, you know, put everything on the table and be open about it and available to respond to it.
Yeah. And we're talking a lot about making and being international environment, having an international environment and making, and you are a company that work a lot abroad, that you have been in many, many countries. And do you have that in mind when you make work? Like, obviously, if you're a company that is demanded outside the national environment that you are making, that creates like a different, I don't know, mindset for the work. So do you have this in mind when you make work, like the touring, touring potential and the universality of what you're making?
So I try, I think I'm a bit lying when I'm saying that, but I try to not think about the result when we're making something. So, I try not to think of, are people going to like it? And, obviously it's really difficult to be detached from that. But at the end of the day, when you make something, you want people to like it. You want that what resonates with you, you want it to resonate with others as well. You can't, I can't help it. But I try to sort of tune that down. So I don't tend to think in terms of touring or success. I just try to think of, and I think you said one of the key words is the fact that the work is universal. So it reaches as many people as possible. Now, making something universal is really tricky because you don't want it to be not specific. And if universal is really hard, I don't think we can ever reach it. How can you reach everyone on the planet? It's difficult. But we do try to try to access as many people as possible. So I guess what I'm thinking of is not so much the world universal, even though that's what I really think about, is the world accessible, and how is the work accessible to the widest possible range of people. So we still produce some, really world-class, dare I say, high art theatre, but at the same time that people can access. Then it's not so experimental, that people can connect with, have an emotional sort of reaction when they see it. So it's not just arty-farty and intellectual and so poetic that no one can ever come anywhere close to it. But it's accessible and in all possible sense of the term. So especially nowadays, I tend to think a lot about that notion of accessibility and what does it mean, and how can we enforce that in the room from the start.
And I think picking up a little bit on having your work having seen by audiences from various different countries, do you see a difference between how these audiences read your work and their reactions to it? Is there big differences?
Yeah, I think so. And here it's difficult to go away from the cliches, actually, sadly. What we tend to think is true. Like in South America, people are very loud and in the best possible way, they're up on their feet, they're vocal about it, and they say it and they're not ashamed of saying it, and it's great, we
would like to hear some anecdotes of that.
Actually, not in South America, but we were in New York, and we were performing in this venue called the New Victory Theatre, and the New Victory Theatre is a theatre for young audiences. So they get school children from all the states, the New York states, sort of come during the week to sort of watch the shows. And so we had this packed, 500-seater, and on 42nd Avenue, brilliant, of sort of from 16 to like 18 years old, and I don't know if you've seen The Nature of Forgetting, but there's this one scene where there's this one scene where Tom and Isabella just got married, and it's their wedding night, and so there's this scene where I take off Isabella's dress and you could hear. Well, you could hear all the teenagers in the rooms full of hormones just cheering us on, and it felt like we were rock stars. It was amazing. And then at the end there was a Q&A, and one of the students was asking, so what were they doing at that point?
And your answer was?
Talk to your mom.
No, I said, what do you think is happening?
Very good. That's very English.
Yeah. and it was great. And he got all shy and said, "Oh, I think they're on their honeymoon." But it was really good. So very, very, very vocal about the work. And then there is, for instance, we went to South Korea. We're performing for a week in Seoul, and the work was really successful. We're in a much smaller space. It was a big studio, but it was a small capacity, and the audience was very sort of reserved, and it was very intimate, and it was very quiet, but at some time you could feel that there was tension in the air. So it's quite beautiful in the sort of the serenity of it, and the quietness, and the sort of the humility of and the sort of the hiding away of the emotion. It's quite beautiful as well. So yeah, I think it would be two extremes.
Yeah.
You're gonna ask?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna go for the boring question.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so the boring question is, because you know how, being from Spain or from France and touring abroad and having contact with different ways of producing work gives you access to how things get done elsewhere. So we are also asking our guests, like, from your knowledge of the industry elsewhere, what do you think, for instance, maybe France or maybe elsewhere, I don't know, what the industry can get, what positive things can the industry in Britain get from Spanish way of doing it? In my case, I would say Spain, maybe from France, maybe, like how things get done here that are good and other countries should learn, and vice versa.
It's a really tough question.
Told you it was a boring one.
No, it's not boring. It's actually it's actually really interesting. It's really interesting because it's part of the, I think the job of an artistic director is not just to make the work, but it's to actually take the work to an audience. And I love that part of the job. It's just that I think my understanding of other ways of working abroad, even though we have been, is just very limited, because you're still, usually when you're being brought in for a festival, you see the glamour of the festival. So you're not really aware of the inner workings of the industry in that particular moment at this particular time. So I think it's a false sort of idea. However, what I can say is that I think in England there is a very good amount of support for emerging artists, from purely from a finance point of view, all the way up to festivals and opportunities to sort of showcase the emerging talents. When we go to the US, for instance, that is completely missing. So there is, so there isn't, we wouldn't be able to exist in the US. We wouldn't be able to make sort of something that is not making any money. And it took us 10 years to make something like The Nature of Forgetting, who then was, successful enough to then tour to all these places, and that was great. But had there not been sort of 10 years of subsidized support, we would not have been able to do that. So for instance, in the US, it seems from my point of view that is missing, and therefore the amount of emerging companies making really exciting work is not really there, at least from what I see from the outside. In France, for instance, I think the level of support is amazing. I think venues are very well subsidized. A lot of companies of our scale are really well funded. I guess the downside, again from the outside, is that if you're not part of it, you're not part of it. Okay. So it feels like it's a lot harder to actually get in and get to the door. And I think that's also something that is quite good here in England, is that even though it's difficult, it's a competitive process, so it is difficult. I'm not going to lie about that, but at least it's a transparent process. And I I don't think it's true everywhere that it's a very transparent process. I
know this is very true. I think I totally agree with that. It's super transparent, and actually we're talking about the Arts Council. It seems accessible as well. Like if you don't get the funding, you can ask why. They will give you solid reasons for why not, and you can reapply again if you. And that is something that is, you say hands down?
Missing in Spain anyway, because you're now have a little bit more of an understanding of the.
Yes.
Much. Do you is your work produced solely in the UK, or do you have other partners from elsewhere?
So we would love to have other partners elsewhere. But no, at the moment we don't. At the moment, the work is made, developed, produced, financed in the UK, in England. And then once the work is made, then we try to take it to other places only when it's made. But it is a big ambition of ours to start to be able to have, co-commissioning partners that are not just, in England, but that could be in France, in the US, a big festival somewhere, because obviously the level of support is then different. So that's our ambition. That's where we want to go. So let's see.
Right. Yeah. Can I ask a fun question?
Yeah.
Since I asked.
Go for it, Federica.
Okay. So can you tell us an anecdote of traveling related of, because we do have some, maybe I can mention some,
it's okay.
of Mercè not having a passport ready just before going on a gig to Poland. That actually happened the day before, like, listen, my passport is expired.
What did you do?
I cried. I went and queued in the Spanish embassy. I cried for 5 hours to apply for a passport, for an emergency passport, and then they say no because I was the director of the company, so I wasn't needed there. I was like, no, but I'm also a performer. Then I cried more. They made me send some photos of the website of me performing, of video clips, and in the end, they granted me the emergency passport when I arrived after.
Yeah, and we managed to get there. We did have like in Warsaw. We had like a room full of hormones as well. It was quite fun.
Yeah, it's one of the similar experience of yours. But any kind of company members irresponsible like me?
We definitely had the passport issue. Someone forgetting their passport underneath a tissue box in a hotel room in Seoul. Yeah, but only realizing it once we were at the airport. And the airport in Seoul is 2 hours away from anyway. But I think the worst that we've ever had was, so we went to Brazil for a week, and then we went to Lima for another week, and then we were flying from Lima to Madrid, and then from Madrid to London, and then we were getting in the van to go to Leeds. We were doing the Leeds Playhouse for a week, and I didn't, I just thought it'd be fine, 3 weeks solid, it's going to work. But then they lost our suitcases in Madrid.
Oh,
did you have props in there?
Yeah. We had, yeah. So, yeah, I don't think it's Spanish people. I think apparently it's Madrid Airport. That's what British Airways said. So,
very unreliable people.
So I did have a little cry, and then so we had to find ways because the show was going ahead. So we really struggled for like a day of figuring things out, and then everything arrived 2 hours before the show in Leeds, so we were fine. But it was tough.
I was wondering that, do you try, like, I don't know how much you get involved in that kind of side of the logistics of touring abroad, but in terms of like sets and props and all of that, so you kind of travel with you've got to travel with the props, and
Yeah, we don't do freight because the shows are just not big enough to justify it, and also it's a whole different ball game. So we travel with everything. We've got foldable chairs, foldable tables, everything folds.
That's clever.
And then we, depending on where we're flying or where we're going, we ask the festival, the venues to provide what we can't fly with. So if it's in the UK, we travel with everything. But as soon as we're outside the UK, we ask for a few things to be built.
Yeah, that's good. We do the same. Yeah.
And then maybe a more personal question about because in terms of the kind of
It's
like you are
based.
No, you were wondering in terms of, like you say, your home is like, you feel like a British maker, an artist, and do you feel like this is you feel like this is your home, or do you ever kind of sort of feel like the call back home, because since Brexit there's a lot of, we don't want to mention Brexit, but it's very difficult not to, but there's been a lot of movement within our company as well, and just kind of wondering if that
I'd love to work more in France and in Europe, in general. I think it'd be really great. I'd love to tour in France because I think I know England a lot better than France. I've been to a lot of cities in England. I haven't been to that many cities in France. So I'd love to tour in France. I'd love to build the partnerships in France because I think I think it'd be great, and also I speak French, so I think it would be easy. So I'd love that. In terms of relocating, I don't know. I really don't know. I think we are happy here in England, and obviously our children are growing up here. They're going to start to go to school here. So is it home? I don't know. I think it's home for now. But I think when you start talking about this subject matters, it's just more than the work. It's about where where my wife wants to live, where our children have their friends, and so I guess it's it's not just about the work. It has to be about it's a life sort of question. So yeah, everything is on the table all the time. I think we're lucky in that sense that that the cards are on the table. I think for a lot of people, they don't have that option. They are where they are and they have to stay where they are. So for us, we have that luxury that if we wanted to change, we could. And I think it's a privilege. So yeah, we have that.
And do you think Brexit has impacted on the work in terms of has it make it more? Has it had an impact on the logistics of? I guess it's been the pandemic in between as well, so that hasn't helped.
Well, we haven't. It definitely will have an impact. It will make things a lot more complicated. It's already making things complicated, but we haven't been able to sort of really see that yet because obviously COVID happened before, and obviously everything stopped. So we don't know yet how much damage it's going to make. But of course, definitely, I think it's a tragedy. So it will have an impact. I just don't know, how much we will be impacted. But chances are that small companies like us and you probably will be the most impacted because we don't have the level of support, not just financially, but also purely logistically.
Yes.
We don't have someone who's going to figure out how to send a van, from London or from Eastleigh to Madrid or wherever. So we're going to have to do this, and that's a week of work.
Yeah, that's a lot of work of figuring out and
So I think we will suffer, but that's okay.
No visas yet, no visa applications yet.
Yeah, we have thick skin. It's okay. No worries. We'll manage to get through it. Yeah, it's all good. So
but also, I think I should say that it will also be a good problem to have. because it means that there's a demand for the work
Yes.
in Europe. So in a way, it's good to have that problem,
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we have not touched the problem yet. No. We have to talk to the foreign entertainers unit.
I haven't even approached this. I think making a show happen in England is already like a lot of fun at the moment. So, and because we're a lot of people on the road, like we're like 8 or 9 traveling every time. So since COVID, we haven't toured internationally. So
are you looking forward to it?
Yes and no, to be fair. Yes, because obviously I love doing it. That's why I do it. So yes, definitely. I miss it. I really miss it. But at the same time, I'm aware that our resources are limited, and I'm quite apprehensive of the amount of work that needs to happen. Not just because of Brexit, because when we go to the US, I mean, it's just scary. So, but yeah, I'm just apprehensive of everything else that we will need to do in terms of protocols and COVID stuff. I think that is that's gonna be fun.
Well, shall we wrap up a little bit? Okay, sorry, Guillaume. One of the things with these online conversations that we have, this will be watched by a lot of students, like our previous online conversations, She Makes It Happen, that is available, by the way. You can, whoever is listening, you can also go there. But we have a lot of students listening to our conversation. Do you have anything you would like to tell a young theatre student about, some tips, advice?
Maybe you can give us the worst advice you ever had, so they don't go there, or the best advice you ever had.
Advice, or
but in terms of what? In terms of making work,
or international, more focused, something that that you think is a good
as a theatre maker.
Oh wow, that's a lot of responsibility then. I would say, don't make your life too complicated. And what I mean by that is to, first of all, in terms of your team, if it's your first project, work with people because at least the element of trust will be there. So you won't have to convince them that they should stay in the room. They'll stay in the room because they're your friends. And that's really important because it's difficult to make a piece of work. So you need to have trust in the room. So work with people limit the amount of people in the room, because obviously we all want to make a life-changing piece straight away of an epic scale. But realistically, if it's your first project, to have more than 4 people in the room is just really difficult from my experience. So I would say limit the number of people in the room, work with people you trust. And make something that you will like, as opposed to make something that you think other people will like, or make something that you think people will fund, or make something that you think is trendy. Make something that you will like, because worst case scenario, other people don't like it, but you like it.
You like it.
And so I think the first person to please is you. And then, if what you make makes other people happy as well, then it's great.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thanks for your time.
Yes,
and lovely. We'll put some links on your new tour dates coming up on this chat. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having me. And when can we see the new show with the flamingos?
You can see it. When is the opening?
In March.
In March.
We're opening in Reading.
The
16th and 17th, and then after that we're going onto a tour around the UK and Wales later in May.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, hopefully I can make
it.
Yeah. With 2 little children at home, it's hard to negotiate at the moment. But
tell me about it. I know.
Yeah, how are you going to do?
Oh my God, the amount of logistics. It's like what you're saying, about logistics. It's like you are invading. I don't know, But it's crazy. Yeah, I have to prepare well in advance, a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, good luck. Good luck.
Crazy times, but good times.
And good luck with the show.
Yeah, good luck with all the touring, and good luck with the new show.
Yeah.
Great. And hopefully see you in person next time.
Yes. Please. No more Zooms. No more Zooms. Take care.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.